Welcome everyone to LowCodeCon 2022. My name is Michael Cares and I'm your host. We're celebrating our second year with this global event focused on all things low code and open source. Our purpose is to bring together the low code and open source communities to share the experience and knowledge of thought leaders and experts from around the world. As the host company and organizer of the event, AOT Technologies is committed to the values of low code and open source. So much so that we developed our own free open source low code development platform, formsflow.ai, which is core to our vision of democratized development for government and business. I'd like to introduce to you today's presenters, Loren Mullane and Abin, who are presenting today on Modernizing Freedom of Information using open source. Loren is the Director of Digital Operations, BC Government. Loren promotes the use of the province's public data and engages with communities passionate about data and the opportunities it presents. He believes in open data's potential to inform citizens about their government and to be the raw ingredients that spark innovation. Abin is a software consultant with 15 plus years of experience and has excellent exposure in architecting, designing, and developing software applications for multi-billion-dollar organizations worldwide. He's experienced in leading medium to large technical teams for multi-year public sector and private sector projects. Loren, over to you.
Thanks for the introduction, Michael. So happy to be here today. As mentioned, I'm Loren. I'm a BC government employee. And, it's great to be at an open source conference. So I was lucky and fortunate enough to be with the team that became the BC Developers Exchange. So we were the team that first got government into GitHub, first got government using open source licenses like Apache 2.0. And it's just amazing to see here in the province of BC, like just the growth of the use of open source by the public sector. And happy to be here and to talk about the work that we're doing today with Abin. So I'm going to do a screen share. Abin, do you want to add anything before we get going?
No, that's not. Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to do a screen share here. Let me know that if everybody can see what I'm presenting here. Okay, we should see a PowerPoint coming up here.
Yes, we see it.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to be talking about not open data, but about freedom of information. And so we're going to cover how we work as a team, what we're trying to achieve as a team, and then how we're using some low code strategies to get there. So Abin will talk mainly about the technical stuff. I'm going to cover off the business side. So for those of you who are not familiar, freedom of information is something that's very common with a lot of governments around the world. Here in British Columbia, we do have a legislation in place called the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. And that act by law gives anybody access to records that are compiled by public bodies in British Columbia. So known as freedom of information requests, there can be two different kinds. One is a personal request. So it may be an individual who is looking for records about themselves or somebody that they're representing. So examples of that would be somebody, say, who is looking for health records, or perhaps they're looking for their records to do with being a child in care at some point in time. So that would be a personal request. We also have what are called general requests. So general requests are the opposite. They're just not about individuals, but they're about government decision making. So general requests could be anything. I think I run the gamut from somebody requesting information for how governments made decisions on COVID policies. It might be them asking about, how we're managing old growth forests. So it can be a whole range of things as far as the general requests go. As far as the FOI space, when I say we, Abin and I, we're working for a group within government called Information Access Operations. And as IAO, we're responsible for triaging and managing, and then also doing the records review for all requests that come to provincial government ministries. So a little overview of the FOI world. So IAO, we process, as you can see here, we process quite a few pages every year. We had up to 1.7 million pages that we did in 2019, 2020, and then down to 1.6 million pages. As far as requests go, we're averaging, well over 10,000 requests that we receive every year. And each of those requests to process costs government on average around $3,000. So I'm sure some of you here are good at math. You can start adding up the full cost pretty quickly of what we're talking about within this space. But it's well north of $30 million as far as the cost of government to ensure that we're providing an open government for our citizens. We're judged on some things we have within like the FOI space. We're always looking for what we call on-time compliance. So it's requests that are completed in the legislated due dates. And you can see these are our on-time statistics up here. We're around 83, 85%, depending upon the year. And then the average days to process an FOI request have ranged between 49 and 58 on the latest numbers. So that's the FOI space. The reason I'm kind of giving you this overview is when we get into talking about the product, these metrics and these things are going to be important to guide us of how we do our development. And so, as I mentioned, we do, want to make sure that we have an open government in British Columbia. There is certainly some costs. And so there's always the impetus to have change to see if we can do some process improvement and other changes. So that's where we come in. So we're this FOI modernization project, and it's a commitment by our Ministry of Citizen Services to basically improve the efficiencies within the system of how we manage FOI requests. We're looking for business process improvements. Are there steps that we can take out? And we're also building a new software system to increase those efficiencies across government. And so if you look at like the current state of how FOI requests are managed, we at IAO actually have our own legacy system where we kind of do the management. But as we get into looking at our product vision, when we talk about our ministry clients, we're ultimately the ones who hold the record. So if a request, say, goes to, tell me everything about water policy, that's going to go to the Ministry of Environment. They're going to be the ministry who's going to be responsive with those records. But they and many other ministries don't have the same tools to manage the requests that we do in IAO. So as part of this product vision, that's something that we're fixing. We're going to be replacing the patchwork of tools that are used across government to manage FOI requests with one unified web application. And in our demo today, we're going to show a little bit of what we've got in production already in regards to that application. So in addition to doing that, this new system, it's going to basically serve a number of different user segments. So of course, first and most important is the public applicants themselves who are making the requests. We also have the ministry clients. So there's going to be people, what we call a ministry coordinator, who coordinate the requests on behalf of the ministry. And of course, there's IAO staff who have a number of steps that they need to do, including reviewing and processing those 1.7 million pages every year. Ultimately, we're looking to deliver business value and save time. So we're going to show in our demo that there's a lot of things that previously would have been manual that we've now automated. And we're just trying to streamline the process to save time and like cut down on the amount of time on each average request that we as government have to do to make sure that we meet that request, getting that out to the citizen. And, we want an easy system to use. And ultimately, we want to make sure that we're enabling the processing of FOI requests in a timely manner to meet some of those metrics that we talked about before, like on-time percentage and average processing days. I will say that this product vision was not come up by our team in a vacuum. Early days when we first started and Abin and the technical team joined, we had what we called an inception session. We had about 45 interest holders who came. So there was both representatives from IO as well as our ministry clients. And this is a synthesis of what we heard about what the aspirations for this project were from all those interest holders. And so when we talk about, once again, who we're trying to meet, here's a little overview of kind of the user segment. So this is a bit of a extrapolation, but essentially, like on the left here, we do have public applicants, and there's quite a few different kinds. Lydia here would be a reporter. So I think those are folks who do quite a few general FOI requests. They're trying to find out why government's making certain decisions and looking for stories that they can do in the newspaper. But there's lots of other kinds of public applicants as well, as references people looking for their personal information. There's also political parties, there's researchers, there's a whole number of different kinds of public applicants. Within the internal space, we do have a key role with our ministry clients, which are Oliver here represents. Those are the ministry coordinators. And so they're the ones who are responsible to be that first point of contact for the ministry when we reach out to them and say, we've received this request. And so when we do our demo later, Abin will be acting as a ministry coordinator to show you that side of the system. For IEO, of course, we have a number of different users. Our kind of classic is the FOI analyst. So they're, pardon me, they're ultimately responsible for managing a request from the beginning to the end. And they also have the very important job of actually reviewing the records and doing any redactions that might be necessary. So when somebody asks for specific records, there's times under the legislation where we can't actually give them everything. And so there's things like sections in the act around like public safety, for example. So to give you just an example, something that we may redact and not give to an applicant, imagine a scenario that a child has been brought into protection of the state. There was some sort of child protection case that happened. And so perhaps a parent does an FOI request and they're trying to find out how did people find out that maybe the situation at home was not a safe environment for that child. So they could potentially put in an FOI request and ask for all the records. And so one of the things an analyst like Cade may do is look at the records. And if they find the reporter who's actually like given the information to government that there's a problem that needs to be addressed in that home, say a grandmother or a neighbor or whatnot, it's going to be important that Cade doesn't release that information to the parent who's looking for that, because that could cause harm, right? So that would be a case of where the analyst has to review those records and make sure that they're removing any content within those records that should not be released under the Act. So, continuing with our context, I'm going to switch a little bit from how the business is operating to how we as a product team operates. The first key thing is that we're all about user-centered design. I think that's pretty key for any kind of product owner now. It's like, you're not the person who's making all the decisions. You're the person who's trying to find the information that has been validated empirically. And it's key that you have somebody who can do that role. So I have a resource on the team who's our service designer, UX researcher / UX designer. And to date, she's led about 120 plus user sessions. So that can be anything from doing discovery, where you're going out and you're just doing some observational studies, or you're doing some interviews with users and you're understanding the pain points of their current state. And it could be that next phase of research where she's come up with perhaps some prototypes or something like that are the solutions to those pain points. And then you're going back to those users or different users who are representative of that user segment, and you're validating that the solutions that you're putting forward are going to meet their needs. I will say also, as we get in talking to Agile, is that user research is great, but we don't stop once we go to production. We're still learning and improving this system based on user feedback at the actual product working in production as well. The other really big key thing is that when you do user-centered design, it's not always about just getting your business requirements right. It's really about creating champions for the product. When your users feel ownership for what you're doing, because they've been involved and they've been co-designing the solution, they're going to be people who are going to be telling others across the enterprise that this is a good thing and they should get on board. So, of course, we want to have this system adopted by all government ministries. So it's very important that we engage our interest holders all the way along. So as far as the team, we do agile delivery. So we have a Scrum process. And I think this is probably pretty common for most on the call, these days. So you're not doing waterfall. You don't have all your business requirements set out in advance. At most, we have about 2 to 3 sprints of user stories that are well defined and understood. What that enables for us is that we're very adaptive to that user research. We're very adaptive to new learnings. And we tend to take an approach where we learn by doing. So I think as Abin gets into talking about some of the technical choices that are made, nothing's made through just like an environmental scan of a tool. Instead, we learn by doing proof of concepts or tech spikes and things like that, right? We find that that's a much quicker, a much more efficient way when you kind of look under the hood of any given technical tool and find out how it works for you. Does it work in the environments that I have? Does it work with the other tools that I have? So we're very big on that. And so, the Scrum process enables us to have that constant learning. It doesn't lock us into any given business requirements. So we do 2-week sprints, but ultimately we're not only doing iteration within our sprints, but we're doing incremental delivery. So as I mentioned, we started in April 2021, and to date, we've probably had over a dozen pushes of changes into production in our various applications across the system. And then one of the big ones that we had recently in May of this year, we released our pilot. So this is what we're going to demo today. It's just a unified web platform to be used by both the ministry clients and IO to manage and triage FOI requests. And so with our pilot, we had about 5 participating ministries. We didn't try to do the change management across all of government. We started with 5 so we could learn. And then we also measured the success. So this is another key thing, I think, from thinking about being an agile product delivery. You can't be thinking about success being about your feature delivery. It's got to be about measuring business value. So we had very specific KPIs or key performance indicators that we had and have all the way along in the project. In our initial phase, one of the things that we were looking to do was, as we mentioned in our product vision, was save time. We're looking to decrease the average number of hours to process an FOI request for those pilot ministries. Our target was an hour. Happy to say that we actually almost doubled that with 1.9 hours. And then back to that FOI overview, as you saw for the business, the on-time percentage is important. For our pilot ministries, we've seen an increase of 16%. And then the average processing days are down by almost 7. As far as the last 2, there's other factors outside our work that's impacted those. So it's a little bit harder to say like what's been through our efforts and what's through other factors outside the system that we're building. Pardon me, but I could say for the first one, it's very much the work that we did to streamline the communications. And that's where the savings are going to be. And that's what we're going to show you in the demo, is that this new system really streamlines communications. And a big part of that is that we have in-app user comments where they can communicate back between the ministry and IAO. And we've also automated a bunch of system notifications. So things before, which were a string of emails going back and forth, checking on things. Now, when we make a change or an action in the system, because they have one unified source of truth, people just get updated automatically by the system, which makes sure that they're aware of what's happening and they're not having as much waste in the system as they did previously. So lots of me talking, but let's stop telling and let's do a little bit of a show here. So I'm going to turn it over to Abin, and we're going to show a little bit of how that streamlined communications works in the new application, the line of business app that's in production. So Abin, I'm going to stop sharing, and my friend, I'm going to tag you in here.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much, Loren. So am I audible? I'm just taking it as granted. Okay. So as you maybe can see my screen, let's do it. So what I'm going to do over here is that I'm going to go to our test app, log in as a ministry user. That's what the role play now who goes. And we'll come back after during my session. I will be demoing different roles and see how it goes, because as the time allows, we have near to 35 minutes left. Let's log in as a ministry user into the test app. So I belong right now. This is FYID1. He is a test user from Ministry of Education. So this is the unified app. This is the line of business app where all the ministry users and IO analysts land on. This is where they process their daily work. So what you see right in front of the screen is the queue. They are working based on different statuses, right? Because FI requests have different statuses, like starting from intake, going through open, call for records, because applicant technically need data, right? Records. So then close, review that before we give something back to them. We will review it, do the harm assessment. Sometimes we might need to redact certain parts. So I will get into that while I move on with my part of demo. But this is what they see, all the IA analyst and ministry users see. But ministry's queue is specific to his team, because he will be only seeing, because I am part of education, he will be only seeing his education related request. And this is the queue. So this is the request where he might be he is watching his team member who is going for a vacation, so he can act on it. That's how it is. Now, let's do one part. Let's go to one of the request details. So this is how a request details looks for a ministry user. For general request, he will not be able to see the applicant details. It's all first name, last name, everything is. This is general request. And he can read the description, and he can see when regards to which date it has been requested for, and when is the due date. So if I look over here, it's like, oh, my call for records is due last week, and I have only 14 days remaining out of it. Okay, what I need to do over here? All records related to compiling annual ministry reporting, including so this person who is an IO analyst, or the person applicant who have entered this information, ask for all the records. It's too much of time. I'm already 5 days due. I need more time. So previously, as Loren mentioned, like they used to send emails, and it might go to a team email and they might lose it, or they will be getting hundreds of other emails from different ministries. So what we have done over here is we have created a unified communication tab. Okay, here we will tell the communication back to IO team like that. I will just add a comment. Oh, could you please give me an extension? It's a lot for me to find from our doc storage. Okay. So, okay, so I've done that. Now let's turn it back to Loren. He's acting as an IO analyst. Let's see what he responds to it and how he see this message on his screen as an IO analyst. Loren, back to you.
Thanks, Abin. So as Abin mentioned, I'm actually logged in as an FOI analyst. And I have my own custom queue where I'm managing all the requests that I have. And I also have this little notification here that's popped up. I can see that on this particular request, they've been requesting an extension. So I can click into that. I can go, I can see the comment. I can see that they're asking for an extension because there's a lot of documents. Now, the part of the process that you won't see here, but often as an analyst, you would reach out to the applicant and say, you know, given your request, it's going to be a high volume of records. It's going to take some time. Can I get like your consent that we can have more time to respond to the FOI request? And the applicant will have an option to, you know, do that. They could also have an option to narrow their request because maybe they've written it in a way that they're getting more records than they actually need. But for the purposes of this demo, we'll make it a little bit quicker. So I'll just reply. Quick comment back. And then I'm going to go back to the request details. And as noted, because I'm on IO, I can actually see who the applicant is, Tess Jones. Of course, it's a test user, not a real user for the purposes of this demo. And then I can go down and I can do an extension. And the reason for the extension is it's a large volume of search and I can do up to 30 days. Which I think I will, in this case, I will do 30 days. So I'm going to save that. Once that's been saved, you can see the extension comes up here. And then instead of 14 days, it's now 44 days because I've taken the 30 days. So previously, if I had taken an extension, my next step would be then to go to Outlook, write an email and notify the ministry that an extension had been taken. They would then need to get that, go enter it into their system, which may be an Excel spreadsheet. Oh, received extension, manually update the due date and note that, you know, FOI Flex has like granted us an extension on this date for this amount of time. They would have to do all that data entry as well as be checking their inbox to see if any emails had come in. So I'm going to go back to Abin to show what he sees now.
Thanks, Loren. So let's come back to my screen now. Assuming you folks can see my screen. Yeah. So yes. So again, ministry user, and he have asked extension for that particular request. This is the one I have asked the extension for. He might be doing his daily job. He will get the notification over here. Oh, yes, we can do that. The Flex user or the EA user have replied to him. Hey, I can do that. Okay, that's cool. So he will come over here. See, he got extended days now for doing the job. So that's how things work. Like this is what Loren has mentioned. Thanks for Loren for setting up a good plot for this one. This is how ministry and IO saves the time, because it's a rather than we rely on an isolated message. We have emails, but that's just the notifications. But most of the time, we have a notification panel where they will get notification on multiple things, watching request notification like that. So they will see everything in one screen or in one app. That's what Lauren was trying to convince. This is how
And
it works.
Abin, could you just go back to your notifications again, actually, just for a quick moment?
Yeah, sure.
So when Abin first looked at that, he just saw that my reply had come in. But as you can see now, the system has also generated the notification that the extension has been taken.
Yeah, exactly.
So we touched on that a little bit. There's both like user comments and notification, but there's also system generated comments.
Yeah, let's show that then. So as you see, I'm on the comments tab of this particular request. We can see if I put request history comments. See here, Matthew Prodan assigned to this request. Then he has changed the status to open. Then what happens is that Matthew Prodan has changed to call for records. FOAD1, that's me, ministry user, assigned to this request. Then again, flex user assigned to the. So these are called system and extensions, as Loren just mentioned. These are called These are called system generated messages. These are there, and there will be divisional tracking messages. Say one division got added, and this is called user comments. We call it as a user comments. That means person comment type. This is what it is, and if they want to see it all together, they can see series of events happening for this event, happening for this request from day one to till this date. So it's a unified view. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to pick up on that, right? So it makes sense, right? It's about
Yeah.
open government and transparency.
Transparency. Yeah.
So our code is open source. Our
Yeah.
process is transparent, it's agile.
Yeah.
And of course, using the system, there should be transparency across those in government to see where any given request is. They could see the full history, who's made changes, when something has happened with that request.
Exactly. Yeah. So now, Loren, shall I take over from this point onwards?
It's all you, my friend, unless there's
Yeah.
questions that you need me to answer.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Loren. So fun part is over, guys. Now we are getting to boring thing. I will try to not make it more boring. So how I am going to take this presentation next is something like, I will explain to the technical components, technical parts, building blocks. Occasionally, I will be sharing some of the resources which will be useful for you. Surely I will be sharing our GitHub repo URL. Our source code is all open. Anyone can fork it, clone it, use it. Then next point, I'll be sharing useful videos about our other technical components which we used, which we can refer, references on the low-code solution which we used, why have taken this decision at this moment. That's what you are going to hear from now onwards. Okay, so let's come back. So here on FI modernization, technically, it's a big three parts. Bit. The first part is request submission. This is where an applicant submit his request. It can be an applicant, it can be a general citizen, can be a media or a law firm or a business entity. They can. So this is one application which is public facing. Through this application, we get the request inside our unified application. We will process that. And this is restricted. This is restricted to FOI analysts, as you have seen now, and other various ministry and division level coordinators. They will work on it. We call it as FOI flow. That's our internal project name, FOI flow. And once the process is over, daily, night, we have an ETL that flush data to our data warehouse, and stakeholders or higher senior management of business can see what's going on from this date to this date, what have happened in the past. That's called our reporting tool. So there is three, but technically there is four parts. The fourth one is that once a life cycle of a request is over, particularly general, that will get published to an database called Openinfo database. That's in scope of this project, but technically I'm not bringing that into the scope, into this presentation, but we have actually 4 steps for request submission by applicant, request management, and giving back the signed document to the applicant. And also we record that as part of our analytics and publish this document, if it is general, right, to the Openinfo database. So I have 25 minutes left. Let's do a quick demo on how applicants submit a request, and we'll go from there. Okay. Let's take a browser. Let's sign out from this test app. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to open the dev version of the request submission. So I'm not sure how many of you are from BC or from Canada, but if you just go FOI BC submit, this will pop up. This is the production version. Please don't try unless you have a clear reason to submit an FOI request. This is the production version of it. I'm not going to submit using that. I'm using my dev version. You can see Freedom of Information Privacy Act. Anyone can request records. Yes, that's the privacy, transparency, as you have seen. We'll start it. So they will tell if you have something. This is what I was speaking about. If user have a chance to check in open information database, whether whatever he is asking for is already exists, so that it can reduce the effort and cost that government have to bear, right? So that is the fourth comment I was talking about. Okay. So right now, let's create a personal request. So I'm not logging in just to speed up. I'm just asking for myself. It's Abin. Let's give it as LowCodeCon. There are a lot of Abin requests inside. Demo. Okay, what I want. So I need for youth and child. Let's go like this. This is just normal process of a child. It's a personal request. Okay. I'm just selecting education. From which date to which date? I will pick some arbitrary date. Doesn't matter. Email address. Let's give my official address. Yes, got submitted. Now let's go back to OIS dev. Okay. So this is the app which I was telling, which is our line of business app. Okay. So general applicant has submitted a record. Okay. Now I'm logging as an IA analyst, the role that Loren just played. Okay. They will sign in. Okay. So it will not be there on their queue by default because it is an unopened request for us. The request has not been opened yet. Okay. Internally, we call it as raw request because applicant might not be knowing what he is requesting for. Okay. Because because I personally don't know if I need a records from a project that has happened between Victoria Colwood till Malahard or somewhere interiors of BC, which ministry I need to request for. Personally, I don't know. So that's why we call it as raw request. Our intake team will work on top of it. See this request. This is what I have just submitted. Okay. So you can see, okay, this is for demo. See, internal application. So what we have done is a little bit of a story over here. When this project started, this application was already in place. So when the submission happens, there's an email going to intake's inbox, and they will start the request from there into the legacy app. What we have done as part of the FI modernization, we made the plumbing between these two apps. Okay, so they can open up this request. So right now what I'm doing is that I'm just giving an arbitrary number. As per the current process, this will be the number uniquely identifying with our legacy app, and we can sync the information from that legacy app to this app. Okay, I'm not going to the details of it because as Loren mentioned, we have pilot ministries, but there are other ministries which is still on, and those requests are still maintained on legacy app. So if we want to sync between these two, that is what this button is. Okay, but for the purpose of the demo, let's go like this. So I'm just giving a unique into this number. This is like 3rd of November 9:40. Okay, I'm assigning this to myself. What category? Yes, we categorize the people, interest groups, law firms, and all. Tick, 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 tick. It's an education and it's a personal request. Okay. And what is the delivery mode? How we deliver back the application package? That is this one. And I'm going to save this. Okay, this is saved. So we get the toast over here. I'm going to open. Okay, so since this belongs to education, this is going to another team, which is called processing team. That's called social ed. So you can see now it gets changed. We change the color code because for each state we have a color code, and see the team gets changed over here. Right now, the application has opened, but it didn't reach the ministry yet. Because during this all time, IA analyst, the intake team, and will be working or communicating back to applicant, technically what you want. Okay, we will streamline. That's why we were telling internally this is called a row request, right? We will polish it, make the request perfect for the ministry. Okay, that's what the process is called. Now I'm going to open this record. So once everything is clear in the open status, I'm going to change this to call for records. Okay, and just during all stages, you can see this audit gets generated as Loren mentioning. It's like full transparency. Who acted on what at what moment of time? Everything is tracking. Okay, so I'm going to change to call for records. At this stage, ministry gets started involving to a request type. It is getting to the team, Ministry of Education, Childcare queue. Okay, it's going to this queue. So I'm going to save the changes. Now you can see this comes up. So this has opened. Now this is with ministry. Ministry can see that. Okay. I'm going to log out. Logging in as a ministry user. So I will tell what kind of authentication we used in further slides. Okay, bear with me one. So if we go to my team, let's do another one. So okay, so this has come. It's not assigned. It's just a brand new request for the team. I can assign to myself. Okay. So from here onwards, you might have seen what was happening between ministry coordinator and IO. It goes to different stages, like harms assessment, DDU, then finally ministry sign off. You will be seeing the first name and last name of the person over here. Why? Because, and while me and Loren was demoing, you will not be seeing this one because this is a personal request. For personal request, they can see, ministry can see the details, but for general request, you can't see it. So it's completely, ministry don't know who requests this, that kind of thing. So that's about the flow. I'm not taking you further into different statuses. You can see records. This request is in records review. There are attachments, and there are more things are already in process. And one more thing, I am going to the third component. Let me just quickly go there. This is our reporting dashboard. See, this is the third component. This is where ministry can see how much requests they have received between this time period, and total active status, applicant type, so they know full-blown things related to that. Yeah. So this is our reporting dashboard. Okay. Now I'm going to go back. We have only 15 minutes left. Let's go back to the slide and we'll take it from there. Okay. So what is the technology stack we are using behind the scene? So the request submission app is basically an Angular app, and it's all our apps mostly are deployed on OpenShift. And our line of business app is based on React frontend, Python, .NET Core, and backend is Postgres. We use Keycloak as our IDMS system, which use government Active Directory, integrates government Active Directory, and it can be plugged with any kind of authentication systems like BC Services Card and all. Our workflow engine is Camunda, and it is inherited from FormsFlow AI. And we have a document storage, all our attachments and the gather records that will go to the S3 object storage. This is an internal service. This is not the Amazon S3, but the S3 service which is the service from BC government and platform. It's OpenShift. We have legacy apps. Right now this is a current state. So Axis is the application which we use, which we are going to decommission after our full implementation. And there are legacy apps running on Windows Server. Our reporting dashboard is Redash, and its backend, our data warehouse is using star schema Postgre. Again, that is on OpenShift. Our ETL is, as of now, it's SSIS, but we will move to a Python-based ETL. Why SSIS? Because data need to be flushed from a SQL server, which is on-prem, through SSIS to our OpenShift deployed data warehouse. Okay, so this is the technology behind it. And what is the low code influence on it? So right now, what we are doing is that we will be removing the forms which I have shown for applicant submission, which is an Angular app. It have high maintenance because whenever there is a change, a developer need to get involved. For the new forms, we are implementing our low-code solution, FormsFlow AI. Right now, the release which is going to happen within the next couple of weeks or few weeks, all the new forms related to the payment, applicant can come and pay for the money for their request. It's being charged, so they can pay, select the option. Those forms are coming from FormsFlow AI. Eventually, we will be migrating all the forms from Angular app to FormsFlow AI. This is the low-code solution which we are used. For our line of business side, we have a couple of other modifications or the custom user experience along with the architecture required. So what we have done is that the FormsFlow is a beautiful low-code solution. It's based off of microservice architecture. We used our front end, our own custom front end, but we used the backend engine of Camunda and PostgreSQL backend for that. So I will be telling why I use that on decision-making points on the further slides. But this is, as of now, this is our current tech stack. Okay. For the people on this meeting, I'm not sure how many of you know about FormsFlow. FormsFlow is basically a low-code solution. It's based, it's purely open source, Apache 2 license, where you can spin up forms very easily. We can dynamically create forms. You can attach your custom CSS to it, but that will require small effort, very small effort. You don't need to create or bootstrap or React app or Angular app from upfront. Online, you can do that. And once the form is created, it can be attached with Camunda workflow, and reporting can be fetched from the Redash. And it's compatible with OpenID, IDMS, Keycloak. As I told you, have just seen, we are all using Keycloak as our IDMS. We are not tightly coupled with our Active Directory data store. So that's beneficial. So OpenID compliant, it will connect to any identity store behind the scene. Okay. Microservice-based architecture, that's big plus point of FormsFlow. That's what we have used. We used whenever we need at the moment when it is required. Some low-code solutions will come as full-blown kind of stuff and it will choke up our resources. It's no need to use like that. You can switch off or adapt to certain components. And it supports installations on Docker, OpenShift, and Kubernetes. Okay, it's built in for that. And one of the major thing which this low-code solution played a key role during the pandemic. The services BC have set up apps using low-code as-is implementation, no customization. Within days, they have spinned the forms and workflows to it. What I'm going to do is that rather than I'm speaking too much, I will give you references for FormsFlow, and there is a beautiful demo that our folks has done for a minute. My buddy Vinod and director from BC government, Karim Gilani, he have implemented FormsFlow solution during the pandemic days. You can watch the FormsFlow videos on the 2 URLs I shared, and there is a GitHub repo of FormsFlow AI. Please have a look. This tells everything related to that. Okay, let's go to the next screen. So in progress state or in future state, we will be eliminating or kind of what I'm saying is that legacy solutions. We'll be using FormsFlow fully on FOI request submission on top of OpenShift. Okay, and for our line of business, we are planning to implement event hubs. I will tell what is the need of event hubs in the further slides, and we will be using artificial intelligence to process the records, as I was mentioning earlier. The records which before we give back to the applicant, certain information need to be redacted, because if there is some information that personally identify a government employee, or if there are any protected C information involved, we need to hash that before giving into the general public. So for that, we use NLP-based solutions like Spacey, duckling to understand the personal information and redact all. We use a PDF, a tool called PDF, which is paid. Okay, and reason why that selection happened also I'll mention, because that's full blown. We can integrate our open source NLP to that. It can take the components what we are passing to the PDF round. So we thought, why to build one? We can just buy. Okay, and we are planning to implement move our certain components to an OpenShift SDN based MRR cluster on BC government. Why? Because we have protected C data. So there are multiple clusters available within BC government based upon the security settings. So that will be the future thing. And for, as I mentioned, SSIS will go away because we'll make, once we decommission the legacy app, all the information will be on our unified application. We will run ETLs out of that data store, that means data store of line of business app, to our data warehouse, right? So we analyzed a couple of tools over here, and we will be picking one of them to go to production once we decommission our legacy app. Okay, so this is the tech stack behind the scene. So key decisions, again, how this application is this much effective till this date because of the key decisions from business side as from the technical side. Microservice architecture, that's one of the key decisions we made. Whatever we build, it should not be hard coupled. It should have its own separation of concern so that we can reuse. Event driven or message queue driven design, because again, no hard coupling. It's all by event driven or message driven architecture. You will be seeing there are workflows behind the scene. All the workflows are not tightly coupled with any of our backend API. It's all through event driven, means we would publish event to a Redis queue or a Kafka instance, and the workflow will take up to work on top of that. Third, build versus fork or buy. So when we estimate a task, as Loren mentioned during the sprint cycle, we will evaluate for the next couple of months what all technologies or what all components features we need to deliver to the business. We'll see whether we can build it. If build cost is more than the fork cost, surely we have forked many common components within the BCGO. There are common components available within the BCGO as well, and also the third-party Apache license open source as well. If those have any security concerns, if the open source code have any security concern, we will go for buy. So until this date, we have procured two. One is PDF-tron, that's procurement is in process. We have used a Sync Fusion for file conversion from MS Office to PDF. Our fourth mantra is isolate the line of business data. We don't want our business data to be mixed up with any of our low-code solution backend. So we isolated our line of business data. And last mantra, fully customized low code is technically a custom solution. So the low code updates will not get effective if you customize it.
Abin, it's Michael. I just want to check in.
Yeah.
We've only got 5 minutes left, and we have some questions that our audience has asked.
Okay, sure.
I want to make sure we have enough time to get those questions answered.
Yep, sure. So what I'm going to share now is the architecture diagram. I will just quickly go through the architecture diagram. So all our instances are deployed on OpenShift Silver platform. As I mentioned, these blue blocks are containers. We are container-based deployments. They are high available containers. We have integrations with our on-premise legacy systems through port operations. We have our MRR cluster, which is SDN based, and we have our S3. We have our S3 data storage for documents. Let's move back to the slide. This is what we are talking about, the event hub. And during the flow of each stage, at the stage of call for records, files are getting uploaded.
Abin, let's do this if we could. Let's answer the questions. So those that have to depart can depart, and then we'll cover this if we go over. For those who wish to stay, they can stay. So the first question I've got on the list, is there any MFA on the web form submission? How does it ensure protection of info submitted?
Because all if ask is for the security in the transit or security in the rest. All the information that has been submitted by the applicant is stored inside our defined network within OpenShift. And security in the transit, we have an encrypted SSL based data in transit, and whenever it is in rest, and we have authentication on top of key clock, so data is not getting exposed. If I'm not sure what the question is, I'm not seeing the question. Sorry.
So it simply is there any MFA on the web form submission?
No, we can apply a multi-factor authentication on key clock. Right now, there is no MFA, but we have plans to implement MFA. Yeah, multi-factor authentication. That's right. Key clock supports that. Yes.
Thank you. Second question is there any requirement for the user to prove their identity when they submit their request?
I can feel that one. So under policy, no, like we're not able to like require a user or an applicant identifies himself in a request.
So that's a policy restriction, not a technical restriction.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Obviously, if it was required, we would have that, but it's not. It's not as a policy. It stands that you cannot enforce that at this time.
Exactly. Yes.
Thank you. And the last question I have right now is: do folks making the request have any look or view inside this process?
Not into the line of business application, if that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, not sure what's being referred to. I think it's just visibility into the process. So, they submit something, it goes into a black box, and they wait for either updates to the timeline or the conclusion of the timeline, but there's no visibility today to the process state, work in progress.
Yeah, so like various things along the request, there's actually a fair amount of communication between the applicant and the IAO analyst. So like once somebody submits a request, they get an acknowledgement letter, for example, saying your request is received, right? If there's an extension taken, they get a notice about that extension. So there's a lot of check-ins with the applicant over the course of the process. And for like larger ones, particularly like the personal requests, you can have like 15,000 pages or something, right? There's always a conversation that happens with that applicant about what they're really looking for, to see if there's a way to get those particular records to them earlier in the process rather than waiting for all the pages to be processed.
Thank you, Loren, for that insight. Terrific. Well, those are the questions that we've got on file right now. I'm gonna formally say thank you to everyone, even though we're going to continue for a few minutes with Abin's content. Just out of respect for those that have other agenda items on their calendars. I want to say thank you to all the attendees that have joined, and for those that have to depart, thank you for participating with us. We hope it was valuable. Thank you to Loren and Abin for your detailed presentation, and thanks everyone. We appreciate it. There is, at the end of this webinar, there will be a Q&A session, survey rather, that will pop up. So please, if you could take a moment to give feedback, we would appreciate that. I'm going to turn it back over to Abin to continue the technical finalization of the presentation, then we'll close formally after that.
Yeah, for the folks, I'm sorry, I got a bit late, but for the folks who are leaving, I have posted the GitHub repos of our code. So if you would like to clone it, fork it, and use it and see how it works, you can do. Everything is very straightforward. Yeah. Then moving back, yes, this is our architecture or design for our artificial intelligence. Means whenever a record gets uploaded, it will get deduped based on content, and it will get extracted. And that, based on the extraction, we run our NLP engine, and we understand whether there is any PII or personal information on that particular document, and it will get reported back to our interface. And going to the data classification, we have three types of data. One is a transactional data that has protected A and B. We have documents which can have protected C, that is being stored inside S3 object, that is certified for storing high sensitive data. I'm not sure one of the question is related to that or not. And that is totally covered by the S3 policy. If somebody know about AWS S3, similar to that, there's an S3 storage policy. You can go and access to that. It's similar to the SDN. And Analytic data, again, that has only protected in B. It will not have C. C is only in the document format. It's inside our star schema designed within the data warehouse, and it's given by OCP network policies. Yeah, but transit is this chart will help the person who asks that particular security question. Multi-factor authentication, yes, it is for the data in transit, not for the data at rest. Hope you know that. Yeah, and yes, I'm concluding. GitHub repos URL I have posted on the chat. Please have a look onto it, and please let us know. Reach out to my LinkedIn or our official email. We are ready to help. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Abin. Thank you, Loren. Thank you, everyone, for attending today. Very much appreciated. Great insights, and have a great day, everyone. And we'll hopefully see many of you at the next session with Loren as well on our government panel. Look forward to seeing you then. Thank you again.
Thank you. Bye.